very much, Ken Corda. I suppose just to respond briefly to each of the deputies. First of all, the Deputy O'Brien, I've always thought of Part 5, it was to work well, to be additional to the mainstream delivery of local authority and approved housing body owned properties. So the intention of this bill is to not supplement, or sorry, not replace that delivery, but to supplement it and to give a greater quantum above and beyond the existing targets. I think on that we agree. I also want to address the issue of raising costs. In fact, one of the big costs for a lot of developers at the minute is finance. And one of the problems, of course, they have in finance is the level of risk. If a developer has banked 20%, for example, of the units as Part 5, that reduces the risk, reduces the cost of finance, and actually could bring down the cost of delivering the units. Now, developers are going to have to make a choice in terms of the overall prices of the units, but in fact, in many of the private developments I'm looking at, having, for example, 10% social and now 10% affordable, if that's what we could, for example, move towards, would ensure that at least 10% of an overall development would be genuinely affordable, guaranteed for the working families that many of us represent. So I think we're on the same page in terms of the supplementary nature of these additional units, and I think the arguments in terms of increasing costs don't stand. With respect to Richard, I agree this isn't a standalone policy, of course, and you and I have supported many motions tabled by each other's parties in terms of increasing the overall quantum of real social housing. The only one thing I will say to you is the Part 5 units are bought at a discount, and the Department have given us the figures for 2017, and the discounts, broadly speaking, are very, very healthy. So you're not buying them at market prices. There are one or two exceptional projects that are outliers, but the general thrust of Part 5 is still significant discounts because you're not buying it at the open market value of the land, and I'll share those figures with you if you're interested. With respect to Minister Murphy, and that's one of the areas where there are outliers, but I'll share the figures that the Department have given us. Minister Murphy, I've always accepted that the state is spending more than it was spending before. My criticism is it's not spending enough to meet the need that's there. So you tell us, for example, that there will be 120,000 social homes delivered over the next 10 years. It will be slightly less than that because you and I have different definitions of real social housing, but even if I accepted that definition of 120,000, we have 130,000 households in need of social housing now. More are going to come on the list every year. So even on the basis of your proposals, on the basis of your figures, you're coming nowhere near meeting need. And in terms of affordability, and there are times when you say things that I'm concerned that your understanding is different to the rest of us. Affordable housing should not be subsidised. The whole point of affordable housing is providing homes to buy or to rent where people pay the economic cost of the delivery, and we find innovative ways of cutting out additional cost without having to subsidise. So cost rental isn't subsidised. O'Coolon, for example, if those houses could never be sold into the private sector, wouldn't be subsidised, and that's a very important point. I'm sorry you found my intervention condescending. It's not that I have some magical powers to see into your head, it's that your office actually briefed the media after Cabinet on Tuesday explaining the reasons why you weren't going to support this bill, and I was just relying on your own media presentation of that. Apologies if that upset you. I do have to respond to the accusation of trying to bully you. Look, first of all, presenting a bill and making a reasoned argument for it, even if you disagree, isn't bullying. And I can be accused of lots of things. Being boring, being irritating, being a pain in the neck, getting things wrong. I don't think anybody who knows me or has witnessed my conduct in this chamber and committee would genuinely say I'm a bully. I might do things that really piss you off. Apologies for the language. But that is my political job as an opposition spokesperson, to hold you to account. So let's avoid those kinds of personalisations, and let's stick to the issues, which is what I did, Minister, with the greatest of respect. Every single criticism and attack I have made to you as Minister is on what I believe is your track record, but we can deal with that as we go. But what nobody can accuse me of is being a bully. Let me also correct you. The Dáil Housing and Homeless Committee made a very specific proposal. 10,000 real social housing units owned by approved housing bodies and local authorities every year for 5 years. That is not what is in your plan. That is not what's there. You will not deliver 8,000 real social houses this year, because 2,000 of those will be private sector leased for a period of time. And that's okay, that's your policy, but it is not what the Dáil Housing and Homeless Committee unanimously recommended. Likewise, next year it won't be 10,000, because there will, I assume, be approximately 2,000 leases. And while I welcome every one of those houses, that is nowhere close to what is required. And what was interesting in your presentation is you still haven't given us any greater clarity in terms of genuine targets for delivering affordable rental or affordable purchase. You renamed the schemes, but not the target. So, again, I appeal to Fianna Fáil. We're open to compromise. We have from now until next Thursday for the vote to work on that, and I'm more than happy to sit down and agree figures if that's what we can do to progress what I think is a very reasonable and sensible proposal for legislative change. Thank you, Kim Corley.